what do you think can be done by a diaspora that faces a country that does not provide the enabling environment for some of their ideas to seep into the fabric of our political structure? Our alumni groups, our tribal groups, individuals are having the impact, you know, infrastructurally, economically back there, but without the recognition. Now, anything that would have the government feeling that we are trying to be active politically, obviously will have them shutting things down. Is there in your field of work or your experience any truth to the assertions that because of what is about to take place in 2011, that the Cameroon government is making it increasingly impossible for organizations like yourself to be active in providing free and fair elections for 2011, and especially in observer status, whereby organizations are being set up to be refused entry into Cameroon prior to those elections?
A lot of the diaspora is just asking for an enabling environment. How many of you have tried to ship medical supplies to health services in your villages or divisions or subdivisions and have had a real problem doing that? How many of you have tried to ship books to schools and have had difficulties doing that? My guess is none of you is interested in an elected position. You just want an environment that can facilitate some of the things that you want to do to give back to the community. And besides, and besides, to think of it, the political right to govern Cameroon doesn't belong to an individual. It belongs to the people of Cameroon. And if the people of Cameroon entrust an individual, that individual should consider it as a mandate from the people to be their servant and to serve them for such time as is constitutionally determined or mandated. I don't think that anyone can take sole ownership of the governance process in Cameroon. But I would also venture to say that if that enabling environment were created, that a lot of the diaspora is not interested in Cameroon politics. They just want to do other things to help improve the well-being of their citizens. You cannot condemn the fate of 95% of the diaspora because you're fearful that it's a 1% or a 2% that is interested in politics. But why shouldn't they even enrich the political discourse in their own country? It shouldn't be forbidden. A number of countries are leveraging that to their advantage. Look at what Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is doing in Liberia. It's incredible. I mean, the first African woman to be elected head of state. You know, even when Taylor was in office in 1997, she stood an election against a warlord, against Taylor. She came in second, and a few years ago she tried again, and she won. And see what she's doing to her country. She's doing an incredible reconciliation and reconstruction process in Liberia, and she's pulling all the strings, the relationships that she created while she was overseas. Those are the people floating into Liberia and helping pump that country up. She's gotten debt forgiveness from all of these financial institutions. And there's even another element to it. When you look at a country like Ghana, South Africa right after apartheid, you look at the migration trends. The countries that are doing well have the reverse migration trends. You have a lot of their diaspora going back into the home country, to go into the private sector, to invest. And that is having an impact in those countries. The countries that are not doing well are having the worst cases in terms of migration trends. And that ends up with us not being respected internationally. I think that the diaspora can also come up with some projects that can speak to the first asset that I talked about in terms of know-how, the scientific and technological know-how. Let me take an example. You can take the healthcare, the health services. It needs a lot of work. You can take the infrastructure. We hear, we read, we see the difficulties of travel. We hear about bridges that give way. And then, the country is almost divided because the bridge is giving way and it takes weeks to try to look for some other ways to rebuild the bridge. We've got Cameroonian engineers in the diaspora. Someone could initiate a study on, maybe electronically, on a website or some kind of study that calls on Cameroonian engineers to get together virtually and come up with concrete ways on how to redefine the infrastructural landscape of Cameroon. You could, through extensive consultations, it could take some time, but through extensive consultations, you could come up with a white paper on infrastructure as an instrument of development for Cameroon, to which Cameroonian engineers across the board in the diaspora would make contributions. And that becomes a white paper that's presented by the diaspora to the people of Cameroon, including the leadership of Cameroon, to work upon on a subject which is apolitical or non-politically threatening, which is the development of infrastructure. But I will agree with you that it takes two to tango. Let me take for an example. We celebrate May 20th as a national holiday in Cameroon. The way we celebrate the National Day in Cameroon is we get the military to go out and to march. We could determine that we will celebrate it differently, and that 10 days before May 20th, we will organize a series of activities for the diaspora, the Cameroonian diaspora, to come back into Cameroon and to volunteer for a week or 2 weeks in various services. I know a lot of Cameroonian doctors, experts, specialists in the United States who will be willing to pack their bags in a very organized structure to go to Cameroon on medical missions as part of a national service. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marius. It can happen. It can happen. And if you do that, we just heard there was an outbreak of cholera in the northern part of Cameroon. It's probably a combination of lack of potable water and the lack of access to health facilities. It may be too late for the diaspora to intervene, but if you organize these kinds of medical missions, you will begin to send out a different kind of message about nationhood and patriotism. You'll be calling people to their best in terms of their attachment to Cameroon. You don't have to sign decrees. If you do that for 2, 3, 4, 5 years successfully, you wouldn't even know where to pack people when the next turn comes about. And you could spread them into the provinces, and they will do it for free. They will do it for free. You can look at the internet, and you can pick up some of the people who are very critical of Cameroon today. If any one of them got a phone call and said, "We know you are an economist by training. We know you've been very critical of our financial policy or our fiscal policy. Write a 10-page paper for us with recommendations on the way forward based on your experience." There is not a Cameroonian that I know who will not take the time to pen a 10-page paper for the sake of our country. We're just not calling them on their patriotism. We're not providing these opportunities. And at the end of the day, I think we have just ourselves to blame, or our country is losing out for it.